Hello. How's everybody doing? I'm just going to chat a little bit. Nina's going to join me soon. She's waiting backstage. We have a backstage here. It's fancy. This has now become a monthly series. We are doing this monthly series of conversations on practice. Hi, Lincoln. Nice to see you. Which started just, on a whim of mine, and it's growing, and I love it. And so last month I spoke with Lily Cushman, and that was really fabulous. And tonight I'll be speaking with Nina Rao, my longtime guru sister. So, hello, everybody. So I am going to start by chanting because, that's what we do, people. Ram Ram. So since it's Holi, happy Holi, everyone. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about Holi. But I'm going to chant first, and then I'm going to bring Nina on. And then we're going to talk for a while. And we will do questions and responses at the end. So let's Om and sing some Maha Mantra. Ram Ram. And I should say Radhe Radhe because it's Holi. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, happy Holi, and welcome to Conversations on Practice with Nina and me, Ambika, Nina Rao. And so, I think most of you here know Nina Rao. She is my longtime friend, my guru sister on the path. She's been chanting now on and off most of her life, and we're going to talk about that. And she works with Krishna Das, and she's also an environmental activist and really like a fierce practitioner, and a really, for me, really a wonderful sort of compass for like how to be on the path, be in the world, and really stay grounded. She's super, super grounded, and has a lot of knowledge and wisdom and compassion and insight. And so I'm really happy that we can talk to her and kind of dig in to some of the things that, some of the aspects of the practice we often don't talk about. And that's kind of why I started doing this series, is to talk about those things that sometimes stay in the shadows a little bit, or stay hidden, or we just don't feel comfortable talking about. So that's where we're gonna go. So Nina, bring Nina on. Oh, hi.
Here I am.
How you doing?
Great. I'm really happy to be here, Miss Ambike. Ambike Devi Jagannath. Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
I'm feeling a little silly, that's all.
That's good. That's a good mood for this. We'll go between silly and serious. We'll see how it goes. We'll just see where it takes us.
Yeah.
So, I have my notes here because I don't always remember what I'm going to say. So, but the first question I wanted to ask you and for you to talk about for everybody. Some people may know this, and I know you've talked about it before, but just talk about your connection to chanting, right? Because you have an interesting story where you started as a child with your grandfather, story you told me long ago when we were first friends and first sort of starting on the path together here, right? And then you weren't really practicing. You were kind of leading a secular life for quite some time, I believe. And then it was here in the US, in New York, where you ended up taking a yoga class where you lived, right? And then you went on a retreat, right, with Kachi, and she was the yoga teacher, and that's where Krishna Das was chanting, and that's when you really sort of had another experience of deep connection to the chant. And I wanted you to talk about that because you're from India. It's native to your culture, this style of chanting. And so how was that for you to like sort of be reintroduced to it by an American? And we all know Krishna Das is chanting so well in this community. It's so beautiful and authentic and grounded. But, just want to sort of hear from you about that, all of it, your connection and that part of the experience, how that felt to you. And then we'll talk about how it's evolving for you, really.
Sure. I think I've told this story quite a few times. I did, in fact, hear chanting for the first time in my grandfather's home. And I was very young. I was 9. And we would keep going back to his home over the summer holidays because we lived abroad most of the time. And my parents were really focused on bringing my sisters and myself to the West because they felt that that we would have the best opportunities as women as far as our careers went and living a good life. So we were very focused on being in the West. We also traveled because of my father's job. But we did go back for vacation to my grandfather's village, which is on the coastal South India, on the border of Karnataka and Kerala, a little village called Bekal. And it was very different from the urban cities that we grew up in. And I was very drawn to wanting to play music when I was young, but somehow it didn't happen for me. I don't know why. I couldn't take piano lessons. I couldn't we moved around so much. It just wasn't possible for me. And so but I like to, tootle around on it. So my grandfather had a harmonium and I thought, wow, this looks like a little piano. What is this? And when I asked him to play it for me, he said, I will, but you should all sing with me. So that was a kind of an interesting experience, to just be invited to sing like that. And he started singing bhajans, and my mother came out and my aunts and my grandmother, and my cousins. And we started singing Vinayaka, which is the first bhajan I ever sang for you, Ambika, when you said, well, what did you learn when you were young? And literally, you asked me, when I was in my 30s, that's when we knew each other, our early 30s. And it just came back to me. It's like the strangest thing out of nowhere. But what I recall about that time, and when I look back, and I think, when we look back, we see the signs onto the spiritual path. You have yours, being in a gospel choir and all the things that you've spoken about in your own life. So I look back and I reflect back, and what I remember is that when I went to a lot of Catholic schools, actually, when I grew up, because we lived in certain countries where they were the only English-speaking schools. And for whatever reason, well, I know the reason, but I wasn't supposed to go to Mass in the chapel that they had. I had to go to moral science class. It was called moral science. For everybody who wasn't Catholic, it was moral science. And I wanted to go to Mass because I wanted to sing the hymns. That was and I realized at that time, like I was already connected to devotional singing. I just didn't know what it was. And, we'd have library period, and the books I would read were the stories of Jesus, because that's what I wanted. There were other things, but that's what I chose to read. I remember all this now. And so when I chanted with my grandfather, I have a memory of, it was very fun doing it with him, but then they also had a satsang at their house, and the village came, and they did it Indian style, where the altar was set up in the middle of the living room, and the men were on one side and the women were on the other side, and everybody was just chanting, and all the young girls seemed to know how to lead. It was just so joyful. And then there was, of course, fantastic prasad afterwards, and it was a great, I remember thinking, what a wonderful feeling it was to be together that way. So that feeling of chanting, whatever arose inside of me, doing it in a group in this way, kind of remained dormant, because we didn't have much discussion about it after that. We left my grandfather's home, went on to doing whatever we were doing, until I landed up in New York in a yoga class. And the teacher was playing some kind of devotional music, though I had already begun listening to Indian classical music, which is pretty much the only thing I listen to anymore these days, which is devotional anyway. So it was, so I was already again turning in that direction. But when I heard Krishna Das, I was not expecting. I was really especially when I saw him, I thought this is going to be some kind of, before I saw him, I thought it was going to be a failed Indian musician, because I saw his name on the schedule. And do you remember my friend Leslie? I don't know if you remember her, but she came with me from my building, and I said to her, Leslie, I'm going to sit in the back of the room because I'm going to leave, And then when he walked in the room, there were two things that happened. Before he walked in the room, on the side table was a little photograph of Maharaji and a little photograph of Hanumanji from Taos, and a candle. So as soon as that happened, I felt something, because one of the things we did in my grandfather's house was do puja a lot. Well, I loved doing puja. That's still my favorite things to do. There was aarti, the conch was blown. We went and lit the lights all around the compound on the tulsi plant, just like we do when we're in Vrindavan or wherever we might be. So when I heard Krishna Das, and he started singing, literally all time and space just disappeared. And I dissolved into that space again that I felt as a kid. And it didn't require any explanation. I stayed there. Next thing I knew, I was right in front of him, sitting in front of him, when I had been at the back of the room. And I spent the rest of the weekend just soaking it in. And he started talking about Maharaji. And, I had started feeling this longing for a guru. So, there are no accidents. Everything happens for a reason. I landed up in this retreat thinking I was going to do asana practice. And this is what I was really being taught or shown the way to. And I made friends with him right away on the retreat. So we... I didn't even know what questions to ask. I think you might understand this as you feel this heart opening for the first time. And there was a sharing circle at the end, and I had no words. I was in tears. It was a kind of a remembering and a recognition of something. It was not tears of sadness. It was tears of being or something. So that it started with that. And I discovered from somebody that he was singing at Monday night's kirtan at Jivamukti, which is how I met you. Because we had our standard thing of going to Starbucks for coffee, and Krishna Das would pick me up and bring me down. He would come down FDR Drive, pick me up from Waterside, and we'd go to 9th Street and 3rd Avenue. And you would be walking by either on your way or returning from your band rehearsal. And that's how we met. First time.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. But then we did the retreat together at Insight Meditation, remember? And
Oh,
we
yes.
hardly knew each other, and we decided we were going to room together and be in silence. And it was your birthday.
Oh, I forgot that.
It was your birthday.
That's funny that you remember that.
I
I totally
remember that.
forgot that.
Yeah, I remember it was your birthday because I don't know why I'm remembering this. It's just coming to me. I drew a mandala for you. I don't know what it looked like, but I drew something. I think maybe with the phrases of the loving kindness phrases that we learned. And then on that bus ride back, we decided we were going to go to India together.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah.
And it was then that I believe it was when we came back on that bus ride or shortly after we were at your house, and that's when you sang Vinayaka for me. Like either it was right then or right after that, but they're connected in my
your
heart mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember that when that happened. I just know that it happened. And you said, why don't you sing what you learned from your grandfather? And that's what came to my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here we are.
And here we are. Yeah. Through so much, right?
Yeah. And then we ended up 18 months later going to India together.
Yep.
And we landed up in Kenchi and met Ma. And then I think I took my clients on tour because I was doing the wildlife trips at that time in the jungles of India.
Yeah, you were.
And I went home. And then I came back and met you in Vrindavan 6 months later, after you had toured all of India.
Yep.
And I'm bringing it up because it's Holi. And I know that you enjoyed Holi so much. So why don't you tell us what it was like there?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. So this is, Holi was pretty magical in Vrindavan because it's the festival of colors, right? And I learned actually in Vrindavan when I was there, because it's a big, huge, like the entire city of Vrindavan just kind of is like immersed in this, in the colors and the throwing of the powdered colors and like just, and Hare Krishna, Hare Ram and Mahamantra and like really ecstatic joy. Like, and I do remember somebody saying that the tradition before the powder, the like really intense colors, it used to be flower petals. And so I remember going to actually to Little Maharaji's, right? That we used to visit this sadhu, this saint, Little Maharaji, who was so sweet down the road, really just love. And there they did it with the flower petals. It was so beautiful. And, you know, we were kept in the ashram because out in Vrindavan, it was a little crazy. And so they were like, stay in because you're going to get like, you don't even know what you're in for. Like people are black, like it's too crazy. So we stayed in the ashram and did it all together. And I think, and my memory is we all got to do a little bit on Siddhi Ma and Jivanti Ma. Like everybody, you know, we got in line kind of just a little bit, which was so lovely. And then I remember the walking that evening after Holi, you know, we'd done this. There were people, everybody was singing all day and, you know, chanting and dancing. There was this woman who went into this like ecstatic dancing kind of trance. It was incredible while people were throwing the colors on her and playing. It was like extraordinary. And then that evening we walked into to see the main temple, Banki Bihari, and all the other temples. And the soil of the ground, which is like kind of really sandy, it's very dusty. It's kind of very dry there and dusty. It was completely pink. Mm-hmm. Like we were walking and we went barefoot and we went to the temples and everything was pink. And I remember just feeling this like really intense love and devotion in the air. Just it permeated the entire place. And I felt really quite blessed and lucky to be there during that day, you know, and be there in that way, like in the ashram protected, where we really were focused on practice and really connecting to Krishna and that love of Krishna and Radha, and like really got into that really beautiful romantic kind of bhakti space, you know. And I remember at that before Holi, but I remember her. I wish I could remember better. She was trying to tell me a story about herself being a girl in Vrindavan, and Shakuntala, this other woman devotee, was translating, but her English was really not good. Was very little, and my Hindi was very tiny, and so I don't really remember, except there was like some kind of something about like dragging, like I don't know. Like, I remember this motion of like her saying like she was like dragging herself or something, or someone was dragging her, but she loved Vrindavan, like loved it, and just wanted to be like in the dust of Vrindavan, like she wanted to immerse herself in it, or like there was something like that happening. I wish I had a better remembrance specifically, or better better Hindi.
You got the feeling, so that's good enough.
Yeah, I did get the feeling.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I took Brad there to Vrindavan when we went to India. What will it be? Not January of last year, but in 2019. And we did the parikram together. And then we went to, we were walking towards Maharaji's ashram, and we walked past Choti Maharaji's place, and it was all closed up, you know. But I sat there for a minute, and all those memories came back of us going there in the Yagyashala behind. And yeah, India is sweet. India can be sweet.
Yeah. So I have another follow-up question for you on the sort of, because we talked about this with Lily, and I talked about it with Mirabai Star too when we first, talked, when I did that first talk with her, and we talked about cultural appropriation, and I really wanted to talk to you about it because you have a different take in some ways than other people I've heard, and because you're Indian, because it's your culture that's been appropriated sometimes, and sort of, like how because we didn't talk about this in the early days. This wasn't sort of something that I was conscious of, and I don't know if you felt conscious of it in those early days. I was just so happy to be given this practice. I was so happy to have found, chanting, and met Krishna Das and met you and met Siddhi Ma and been in Kenchi, and I just felt like this is my home, and these Maharaji satsang is my home. And I didn't question really like, oh, well, I'm this American white woman. What am I doing? I mean, I had moments, when I'd have to talk to my family and they were like, what the hell are you doing? But, it wasn't sort of something that was being talked about. And so I'm just, can you talk about it from your perspective, how it feels to you now, if like any kind of evolving you've done or around it, or your take sort of?
Well, to be honest, this subject of conversation came to me really from from our younger children. It was not something that was in our consciousness, but the younger generation talks about it a lot. My daughter and my nephew and nieces, they were discussing this a lot. Cultural appropriation with regard to the culture of, Native Americans, people of color from different traditions, but even Black people who live in this country, African Americans. And, as I said to you, I grew up in different countries around the world. I was born in America. My father wanted us to live in America. I saw my parents in Western clothes most of the time, except when we were in India. We learned English as a first language, not our native tongue, which is Kannada. And we lived in Thailand and in Canada, and my parents then went on to live in Africa. But we traveled a lot. And for me, visiting other countries and bringing back a piece of their culture. Like I always also tried to learn the language before I went somewhere. I like languages. So I would try to learn a few phrases of Spanish if we were going to Mexico, or Swahili if we were going to Kenya, or, like that. I always had this feeling of wanting to just become invisible and immerse myself in other cultures. And I still have that. I really do. And so when people talk to me about cultural appropriation in our world, in the bhakti world, because I think we must talk about it, there is definitely a growing discussion around cultural appropriation. I don't deny it. And there are good reasons to be discussing it because certain people really do feel it. I don't. And I'm more concerned about, like, when we look at the history of India, for example, and you look at the colonization and how a lot of things were taken out of India, there's some reparations that could have happened or should have happened there. But let's talk about this with the context of what we're talking about, which is spirituality. And my experience and my understanding of it is that many Eastern teachers started coming to the West. Back in the late 1800s, it started. And there were religious forums and, leaders got together. Swami Vivekananda came, back in the late 1890s here. So why? He was a monk in the Ramakrishna order, and they were coming to share their practices. So if they're coming to share their practices, and all the teachers that came after that and continue to, like His Holiness comes and the Karmapa comes, I love to go and study with the traditional teachers. That when any of the saints come from India, we went, Amma was coming, we were doing all that back in the day. And they are sharing practice with us. They're showing us a path. They're showing us what we can use to help ourselves. They're giving us tools, and they're models for what can be accomplished in our human life. And, even if we look back at when Ramdas went to India, and Maharaji just took him under his wing and like installed him in Kenchi and said, learn all these things from Haridas Baba, which is what he did. Came back and he taught yoga. And then while he wasn't supposed to talk about Maharaji, that's all he did. And the same when these guys went to India, Maharaji took them under his blanket. And what happened when we went to India? What did Ma say to us? When there were certain things that happened in the temple, do you remember the time? You remember the time when I had to be the messenger about the Yagyashala, new rules in the Yagyashala?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I really remember that. That's a great thing to talk about. I will never forget it. You were in the worst position, by the way.
It was a hard one, but it was a great lesson for me. But the thing about it was that the thing she said to me is that she said, the same blood runs in our veins. Maharaji doesn't love anyone more or less. He loves everybody the same. And she invited us into the ashram, and in such a way that we could partake in everything. And they gave us everything, Ambika, to be there. Children running around, feed us what we needed, and she really honored the fact that we were coming there for darshan of Maharaji's body in the form of a temple, her darshan, coming for practice, coming for retreat, like spiritual rejuvenation. She really honored that. So I'm grateful. People ask me all the time about this whole thing about this situation. And I say, listen, I had to come to America to learn the Hanuman Chalisa from a Jewish guy from Long Island, and it's the truth.
Yep.
So if I hadn't heard Krishna Das, where would I be now? I don't know, but it almost, I mean, there's an infinite number of possibilities. But the point is that I did meet him, and I did get pulled, into this path because of him. So I believe that spiritual practices, the teachers who really teach them, the traditional ones, they want to share. I'm taking a Sanskrit class now, a Vedic Sanskrit class, with a teacher who is Indian. She lives in Belgium. She's married to a Dutch guy. She is studying Sanskrit from traditional Brahmin teachers from Bangalore, she's also from the similar background as me. And according to her, the Vedas say that these practices are meant for everyone. It doesn't say Indian, it doesn't say celibate, it doesn't say man, it doesn't say woman. Everyone. So, if Western people went back and brought these teachings back, it's a sharing circle, and it's up to us, each one of us who are on the path, to go deep into the practice in whatever way you can. Find the teachers that resonate with you. Read the books and really learn what you're doing, whatever your practice might be, and go with it. It's I don't know if appropriation is the right word for this. That's what I have to say.
I actually want to follow up on what you brought up about the Yagyashala, because people don't know that story. So I think it's actually a really great thing to talk about, because I've thought about it a lot, because so many things came up in that moment of where, so I'll start a little bit, but then I want you to elaborate, because you were the messenger and it was a hard message to send. So we were in Kenchi, and it was the time of Durga Puja, right? And that's where the Yagyashala is, the place where they do the fire puja, right? It's the firehouse. The yagya is that ceremonial fire. And so most years there are a lot of rules around that particular ceremony, that ritual, that puja. A lot of rules. And in years past, Westerners had been allowed in different ways. And I even remember, Nina, you probably remember this the year that Ma had us all clean the Yagyashala. Yeah. She asked the Westerners to do it. And you were, Nina, I just want to say, like, often was an honorary Westerner. Like, you were it was really funny to go with you for that first time to Kenchi, because people, I remember this, they didn't know what to make of you. They were like, but she's Indian, but she's not behaving like an Indian. She's smoking beedies in the tea shop like a man, and you would wear, yeah, I outed Nina. But like, you behaved like a Westerner. You didn't follow like this typical, very traditional Indian woman rules for the women. So it was really interesting. So anyway, we were asked to clean that Yagyashala, right? But then this particular year, so we were in it, we were all over it, the Westerners, right? This year, there were people on the board who said that the ritual had become less pure in some ways. This is my memory, and please correct me if I'm getting it wrong, or tell me your take on it. And this wasn't coming from Siddhi Ma, but it was coming from the board members. They didn't want the Westerners to be a part of it, because there were all these rules, and the Westerners weren't able to keep the rules properly, to keep the ritual pure for the Devi, for everything to go right. And so you, Nina, were tasked with telling old timers, Westerners who'd been coming for years and been part of the ritual, that they couldn't be inside the Yagyashala, like they had to be outside, or there were things they'd done in years past that they couldn't now do, even though they kept to a lot of the rules. Like, and we can go over what the rules were, but I remember that was, for me, it wasn't personally hard because I wasn't, I didn't care whether I was inside or outside. I just wanted to see Ma, really. That's all I ever wanted, right? So I was like, but there were people who were really upset and offended. And also, like, there were things that she talked about, certain rules that I remember when she talked about them, they were hard for me to sort of get my mind around, because they were specific to women, some of them, and felt like not very feminist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely women's rights have a long way to go in India. But I just want to say that nothing was said to me about any impurities occurring. Like, that word didn't come up
Okay.
at all. And also, it wasn't only aimed at Westerners. It was meant for Brahmins. So even if you weren't Brahmin, you couldn't enter. So it had nothing to do with just Western or not. But clearly, as Westerners, we don't have much choice about being Brahmin. And they knew that I wasn't either. So, but even then, so this is what she said to me. What had happened before, for those of you who don't know, is that the Yagyashala is like an open air gazebo, and there's a fire pit in the middle, and there's like a lattice fence that goes around it. So you could technically stand right outside it and watch everything that's going on inside, which, quite honestly, I was very happy to do, because I didn't want to sit there cross-legged, because once you go in, you can't leave, and then you have to have a bath before you get in. I mean, there are so many very strict and it has to do with the religious aspect of it. It's not it's a way in which however it is that the rituals are put together, which we know nothing about, and that's okay, So they were perfectly fine with us sitting outside. You remember, we could sit right outside. We could participate in the puja. We could partake in the prasad afterwards, like all that. They just didn't want us, like, it's almost like in a church here, like you wouldn't climb up onto the altar or the where the priest does his thing. Like, he comes down to give you the communion and whatever. So it was just, and so for me, it was fine. Like, I didn't make any difference to me. But there were Westerners there who had been doing it in the past, because of the person who used to sponsor the pujas, Indar Babu, and he loved having the Westerners in there with him. And but Ma said an interesting thing. She said, "Nina, times are changing. And so it's not that I want everybody to do what they want to do. You're coming for Maharaji." Like she said it, she said, "You're coming for Maharaji. I want to give you whatever opportunities you need to be with Maharaji." But she said this decision was being made by the board. And it's just a way of keeping things in a way that's manageable for everybody. Because I think things can get a little chaotic. And then she just very offhandedly, she said, "Maharaji's time was different. He could do anything."
Right. I remember
That's
that
what
now.
she said to me. She said, his Leela was something different. And so, that was fine with me. And ultimately, there was one Westerner who I'm so fond of, and he was very upset when I told him. And he left the next day. He wasn't upset with me. He was just upset. And then I looked in my journal the other day, and Ma said, she said, "Koi baat nahi, no worries at all. At least he had Maharaji's darshan." Like, that's how she saw everything.
Yeah.
So clear and so simple, always. And so, other temples like Krishna Das and all, when they talk about when they went to Vrindavan during their time, they would go and see Anandamayi Ma, for example.
Right.
So Anandamayi Ma's temple was run by Brahmins, and it was very strict. Like, they had a very different experience there. I mean, people loved Anandamayi Ma, but there were very different rules than there were in Maharaji's temple, the way he was around his devotees. So, I was going to say we are guests in their home, but she would never allow me to say that, because she would say, "This is your home."
Yes, she would.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. I had not, I wasn't thinking about that, but it's a good memory.
Yeah.
Because it brought up so much for a lot of people. And then it was like kind of juicy stuff to work with in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
When difficulties came up in Kenchi, I remember feeling like it always felt more intense to me in Kenchi when things would come up within us like that were really hard. It was sometimes being like thrown into the pot of boiling oil is how it felt. Like unbearable, but you were there in that space, and there was Ma held the container and Kenchi Dam itself and the mantras and the practices, and so you could get through it. But I remember the feeling of when things like that would arise, how intense it was. And I would sometimes think like, and Krishna Das has talked about this too, right? I would think like, I'm not going to get through this. Like, I don't know how, I don't know why, but I don't think I'm going to make it through. Like, I'm going to spontaneously combust or something. And then somehow I would, right? I mean, I would just keep doing the practice, keep going to Ma, keep praying. But it could be, sometimes it was like days of like, or a whole week or so, you're not there for that long. And you could spend a week like in your mind, like in torture, until something would like open and you would see, and you would have like a perception that would help you. Or that was my experience anyway there. Yeah. Often.
It definitely felt more concentrated there, because it happens to us all our lives, wherever we are, all the time, right? Stuff comes up, and then all we can think about is obsess about whatever it is that we're thinking about. And then it lifts and it changes. But when you're there, somehow the mirror is like right up in your face, and you have to deal.
Yeah, there's no way out there.
Yeah,
you don't have any distractions.
We also went there for that,
right?
Like that was knowledge of that we went because we knew that it was going to be good for us.
Right.
It was the sadhana, the tapasya. That's what we wanted.
Yes, we did. And I remember she used to say, these people have come all this way.
Yeah.
They've taken planes. They've come all this way. It hasn't been easy. It's been really hard. They've come with their babies, their children. You and I dragged our babies there. And she was like, and it's because Maharaji called them. It's for Maharaji's darshan. It's for the practice. Yeah. So I have another question I do want to get to here, which is this. I want to talk to you about what's known as the householder path. And this is like a specific thing that I learned in India, but I wanted to talk to you about it because it's really what it is, being a householder. Like in India, you could be a sadhu and just only do spiritual practice and renounce the world, right? Like there is that path, and that's a choice. That's an option. And that exists in other traditions too, right? We have monks, we have nuns, we have, a lot of in most traditions you have that. But Maharaji's people were pretty much all householders. He didn't do a lot of there weren't a lot of sadhus. There were some, but mostly it was people like us who had families and in the world and living our lives, and yet trying to evolve, right? And so, but the thing is, like when I first started, I, like so many others, like I wanted enlightenment. I was like, I'm going for it. This is what I want. and I know it's possible, right? I want that. And I was like all the way. And there was a really strong part of me that wanted to renounce everything. And I just wanted to be with Siddhi Ma, and I didn't want to be in the world or have a job or have a family or anything. Like I just wanted to be with her and only her and do that, right? And that would be the way. And that's not what happened for me, but I was really torn for a while in my longing to kind of just renounce, and thinking about that. And I think there was a way in which it just felt in some ways easier, I have to be honest, like trying to do both, that balance of living in the world and staying on the path, I find challenging every day, really. And but I remember you said, And I don't remember exactly how you said it, but I'm gonna go with what I remember, and then you're gonna correct me. But you were like, yeah, I don't know about this enlightenment stuff. Like you people are talking about, like, I don't know. I just want to be a good person. Like I just want to do my practice and be a good person and glean what little bit I can. You were very practical, and you were really like, you were very decided. Like, I have a life in this world that I want to live that's important to me, and I want to be on this path and doing these spiritual practices. So can you talk about that? Like the way that you do that, because I feel like actually you're a great model for people, because you've really stayed with that. And yet it seems to me from the outside looking in a little bit that you're very steadfast. Like I don't see you kind of going here and there and this and that and wavering. Like you've really embraced it in a very steadfast way. And so your practice, you're very committed to it. Like I've never heard you doubt. I've never heard you felt like you went off on a tangent and left and came back. Like you stayed super steady and focused. So that's what do you want to say to all that?
I think that maybe just my desires were very strong, that I knew I wanted to get married and I really wanted to have a kid.
Uh-oh. Something happened. Hold on, Nina. Nina froze. Hold on, people. This is we're going to get there. We're going to bring Nina back, and she's going to answer the question. Something happened with her connection. So I'll just for now, you know what I'm going to say now actually is that this would be, some of you guys have been writing questions in the while we get Nina back. Some of you have been writing questions already in the chat. So if you would I'm just going to if you guys would post your questions in the chat now so we can see them. And I know some of you wrote questions earlier, but if you could repost them, because I remember a couple of them, but I don't remember all of them. So if you wrote earlier, repost them, and then we're gonna, Mark and Anna behind the scenes are gonna sort of make sure we see them. I'm gonna read through the comments. So that way, by the time you all have posted your questions, Nina will answer the question. We got her back. Yay.
Yeah, I had
So
to ditch my
back.
camera. So we're just using my regular my computer camera.
You're always beautiful.
Oh, thank you. As long as you can see me, that's good.
We can.
It's a little dark. Yeah. So trying to remember where I was. What were we talking about?
That's a good question. We were talking about householder path.
Oh, householder
path, right. Enlightenment, like wanting to be enlightened and renounce and all that. And then
I think, Ambika, I have to say that all the Leelas that I read when I was younger, because I did read the Ramayana, and can you hear me okay too?
Yep, I hear you great.
Okay. I did, I read the Ramayana and I read the Mahabharata and I read Krishna Leela, and all these stories, the central figures are all householders, if you think about it. And so it never, while there were sages on the periphery, definitely, who were ascetics, they were all getting into trouble all the time.
That's true. That's
with all kinds of damsels and all that. So it was never a path that was actually presented to me, right? And I also grew up at home with my grandfather and my parents who would do puja. We went to the temples, and the temples in India, as you've seen, as the churches and the temples here are filled with families, right? That's everybody goes for mass or goes for puja or goes for any festival or whatever. We go together as a family. So enlightenment was not anything that was ever spoken about in my family. And certainly when we went to see Siddhi Ma, we knew that Maharaji had kids. We knew that Siddhi Ma was a grandmother, and so, and also, like after the first few times that I went to see her, I don't know if I just remember this also. I had gone alone, you and I had gone together. At the time, I think you were already in a relationship at that point, but I was single, and I had been, and then so like a couple of years later, I went, and we were all in a group, and I think you were there, and we were sitting outside on the patio, and we'd had this beautiful darshan and everything, and I was doing the translation and everything, and I went to pranam like this, and she she hit me on the head like this, and then she said, "Why aren't you getting married?" Like literally out of the blue, like I didn't even have anybody to marry up until that point. I had actually just met someone just before and was going to ask her, like, this guy's asked me to marry him, I wanted her blessing. But she foretold that, like she knew it already, so she kind of made it very easy for me. And so it was never really a thing that I wanted to. And I remember when you wanted to, I could see how that was not going to happen.
Yeah, you knew
given
better
everything
than
else
me.
that was going on.
I was a little deluded.
You just wanted to be in India, and you wanted to be with Ma. That's what you wanted.
That's true.
Yeah. So you were trying to find all the reasons to do that. Nothing wrong with that.
But how do you sort of, because people were reminding us that you stopped when you said you knew you wanted to have a child, and you did. I do remember that. But like, how do you stay with, because you're also a very practical person. Like and that was one of the things, like the rest of us were like, oh, money, whatever, and la la, that's all worldly stuff, and and then you have a kid and you're like, yeah, that matters. So like we were just a little like sort of lost in that kind of like fantasy land a little, and you've always stayed very, you weren't, and so but really also, how do you sort of stay with the practice and the practical aspects of being in the world? Like how do you balance that?
I don't know. I think it's just a natural state for me. I don't think I have to try very hard, because honestly, in order to commit myself to a full spiritual path, it would be very hard for me. And I know that. I don't know if at this point in my life, I can just say, I'm going to go meditate and do puja every day. We met some Westerners when we were out there, who were like on the path, they would come and see Ma, they're doing Mon, and like there was a whole thing happening. And I just didn't see that for me. It just wasn't what was drawing me. I mean, now at this age in my life, I think about one of the things I love to do, as you know, is to go on pilgrimage. And, Ma loved to do yatra as well. So I do think about wanting to have, now that Uma's grown up and gone to college, and, she doesn't need me the way she used to. And, my partner is also, his children are also grown up. So it's now just the two of us, and on some level. And I think about what it's going to be like if I live, however long I live, in my old age. Like, what do I want to be doing in my time? And you know how it is in India also, like there are particular stages. First, you're a student, brahmachari, then you're a householder. Then there's the parents who are together when the children leave the house. And then one of the spouses leaves, and then you're left alone. And what do you do? And I just feel that that time will come for me. It just hasn't been yet. I feel like I get all the blessings for all my desires to be fulfilled by staying connected with Ma and Maharaji and Hanuman and Devi and all the divine entities basically through practice. And that keeps me really straight. And then I get what I want. I might not be happy with a lot of things that I get too, but I realize that a lot of it is happening on my behalf. I try to understand that though things might not be going exactly the way I wish, I am learning. The more I do practice, the more I understand that whatever is coming to me in my life is for my evolution, for my spiritual evolution, for my soul. And if I am meant to do something else, I will. But right now, I am just a practical person. You know how I am. I want to pack my bags the night before so we don't miss the train. You know that better than anybody because you're missed last minute. That's just me. It's just a natural thing. And it's not hard for me to be this way, to be honest. Like I don't have to, like, I think maybe for you it's harder. And and maybe I'm just not bold and I'm not courageous and I'm not, I like the the steady. That's me.
Yeah. No, I think what's honestly harder for me is that I get pulled in many directions is what I find. And I find it, so that's what I mean when I say it's like almost in some ways for me, I felt like if I could just go off, it would be easier to stay focused. And even though that wasn't a realistic idea, because I do have a lot of desires and have had a lot of desires. And now I don't think I think at the time I was a little confused. I thought that those things were bad, and I don't anymore. I don't think there's anything wrong with my desires. I think they're perfectly wonderful human desires. And so as I've aged, I've gotten better with holding it all, and acknowledging my desires and sort of bring, for me, I'm always trying to sort of bring it all together. But I have had the experience, and I still do sometimes, of being pulled here and there, or finding things at odds with each other, like how do I do this and that? Do they make sense together? Does politics and my spiritual practice make sense together? Does social justice and my spiritual practice make sense? Like things like that. And when I'm doing work in the world that feels, at a job that feels like it's not in the path exactly, like how do I find the thread there that's really keeps me grounded in the practice and what matters, keep perspective about what matters. So I think that's where I tend to get more pulled apart, and I've, and it's getting better over the years, but you've really stayed very like in that same space, like you've really had that container, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was new to me though, like at the time that I met you, when I was younger, I did, I finished my degree in economics and I came to New York and I worked on Wall Street.
Yeah.
I did all that. And I thought that was going to be my career path. And I literally had a burnout. I just stopped working. And I stopped working, and my father was very concerned. The other thing is my father was very, very practical, as you remember. So, he kind of trained us to be that way. So my sisters and I are all like that. We actually had to work in a slightly opposite direction of trying to loosen the constraints that he put on himself that we absorbed as children as well. Like he almost wouldn't allow himself to feel free in a certain way. So we had to learn how to do that, which we have. I think we've come a long way. And he would encourage it. That was the interesting thing, Anyway, that's another story. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. I really wasn't, Ambika. I mean, I went to business school. I was in banking. I left. And then the next thing that came to me was to work with somebody in the wildlife safari business, taking people on photographic tours. And because I wasn't doing anything else, and because my father knew how much I loved being in Africa, where I had been traveling when he used to live there, I decided to just do it because I thought, it'll be fun. And it became a passion for me, because that's when I developed my interest in conserving wildlife. and hence gave birth to savingwildtigers.org, which is the nonprofit charity. And, I thought I was going to do that my whole life. And while I was doing that, I also thought I was going to really get on the ground, and I was going to actually be an environmental conservationist on the ground, doing research, working with communities. That's what I thought I was going to do. But then, I fell in love, and I got married, and I had a baby, and that wasn't going to be possible. And when that happened was when the opportunity arose for me to, while I had known Krishna Das all this time and I was chanting with him, I wasn't working with him. And so I would do things with him, for him. I was drumming, and all that was going on. But that was when I took on the work of working with him as his assistant. And somehow, it stuck. It's it's probably the thing I've done the longest in my life, actually. It's the longest thing I've ever done in my life. And I know it's because of his steadfastness to the path as well. His steadfastness to the path of chanting, or his relationship with Maharaji, all that's his. But his steadfastness to the practice and his incredible confidence, and faith is not even the right word, it's complete trust. That really rubbed off on me. And also by doing the practice and having Ma, telling us all the time that this is what we need to do, and her getting affirmation from her in a very subtle kind of way that I should just trust what I'm feeling. Because I had pushback from my family too about going to sing with Krishna Das at first. They thought I had joined a cult. They had no idea what was going on. Suddenly I'm going and singing Hare Krishna. And they were in India, where they've seen all this kind of weird stuff that happens with gurus and cults and whatnot. And I said, you just have to come here and see how these are regular people. So, but I think it's a combination of things. So staying with my work with Krishna Das has to do with, I really honor him as an elder on the path. And I feel like there's a lot that I can learn from him. And everybody else that he's ever introduced me to, whether it's Sharon Salzberger, Robbie Svoboda, Ram Das, or all these teachers, this world opened up for me. But mostly it's because of him that I was able to meet Siddhi Ma. It's because of him. Yeah. And so I don't know. It's never been a thought in my mind that I should do anything else. It just never occurred to me. And so I stayed with it. It's the longest thing I've done, really. But yeah. And so, yes, I do have to balance practice and whatnot. But, the plus side of doing the work with him is that, yes, I spend many hours in front of a computer, but I have the greatest fringe benefit of chanting with him and traveling and touring. And so all of it, it's a wonderful, I wouldn't even know how to pray for such a situation.
I have to just comment that, or I have to let everybody know that the funny, tiny little history of you starting to work for Krishna Das, I was actually working for him, his assistant, but he had been, and I didn't do it for that long. Was it a year? And then I did some on and off. You and I would trade back and forth for a while, but he had kept asking you, and you kept saying no. And it was when I finally said, Nina, I need to leave. I can't work. But I came to you and I kind of pleaded. I was like, listen, I don't know how to say, I don't know how to leave him. Can you do it? And then I can leave. It'll be okay.
He was sad when you left, but yeah.
I know, but it was better that you said. But it was funny because you, all that time you'd said no to him. And somehow when I asked you, you were like, okay, yeah. I mean, it was timing. It was the time. karma, clearly.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I just knew that at the time, I'm very practical. So I had my business going, and I knew that my business was sustaining me, and Krishna Das was just kind of starting out at that time, and I helped him in whatever way I could. I just didn't want to take on him having to pay me and things like that. So I knew I could sustain myself doing what I was doing. And there were other people, who were his assistant as well. So it all happened. It just happened.
Yeah. So we've gotten a bunch of questions. So let's take some questions, because I don't want to leave people out. So I'm gonna just have to.
I don't have my glasses here.
It's okay. I'll do questions. I have to scroll a bit, people, because it's like a lot came in. Okay. So an easy one is that I'll take first is, and you and I can just, this is an easy one to answer. Annie asked, do you recall what year you were at IMS for the first retreat together? And it was 96, 97. We like met 97. Okay. 1997. Hello. That was a while ago.
Summer of 1997.
And then, oh, this is a good question. Jeanette asked if you consider yourself a Hindu, Nina.
Yeah, I mean, I do consider myself a Hindu. I don't think about it very much, but I'm born into a Hindu family. And so all our spiritual traditions at home were Hindu traditions. But as I said, I lived around the world. We lived in Thailand for a while, and Thailand is predominantly a Buddhist culture. And so I spent a lot of time in temples in Thailand, and all of it felt sacred to me, so I guess I consider myself a Hindu, but I would never say that unless somebody asked me, like, what's your religion? What's my religion? I guess I'm a Hindu, but I don't know. I mean, I'm so interested in Buddhist studies now that it's hard to know the difference anymore.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because you've delved pretty deeply into Buddhist studies lately.
Yeah, I'm interested in it because it's very connected actually to Hinduism. Its roots come from there. So, and the practices the Buddhist practices have helped me understand the Hindu practices more, because they just are explained in such a way in which we can actually integrate it into our lives, into our psychological makeup, into our emotional state. And, we don't get those teachings necessarily they're not direct in the same way. Like if you read the Ramayana or something, like you really have to glean it from there. Here, they're very clear. It's like, yes, there's suffering. Yes, there's a way out. Here's how you do it. It's so I like that. So it's a nice way to kind of weave them together for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I felt like after spending time in India with Siddhi Ma and going back and forth, and then starting to do some of the, like when I worked with Sharon Salzberg, and so I learned so much. I mean, well, we went on the retreat, the Metta retreat, before I worked with her, or I'd met her like once. She wasn't even a teacher on that retreat, but I did find the practices super helpful, like you said, and still do, in that kind of the details, those tiny details of what to do every day when this comes up in the mind, and how to deal with it, and how to perceive it. And like there was a lot of explaining that I feel like with Ma, it was like always a little mysterious, right? She would give teachings in a very different way. Sometimes they were direct, but sometimes not at all, right? So it is nice to have that kind of really explained in that granular way, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's definite structure there, and everything is named, so it's very specific. So any thought, emotion, skillful, any tools, they have names, and it's very easy to understand the structure. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a lovely one from Claire. How did Siddhi Ma raise her children? Nina, you should talk about this. I feel like you know, I know a little, but I don't know that much about.
I don't really know that much either. I do know that, like, I met her children later, like when they came to Kenchi afterwards,
Right. Right.
And
Same. And her sister.
Right. And her sister. I don't know much. All I can imagine is that from the stories that are told, that when she was married, she was a devoted wife as she was expected, and he was also a devotee of Maharaji, her husband. I don't know much about how she raised her children. I can only extrapolate from how she told us to raise our children. That she was very clear about what had to happen when we had to take care of our children. She said, they already come. She said to me, Uma already knows everything. It's literally what she said to me when I took Uma to her when she was 4.5 months old. And she said, all you have to do is feed her, take care of her health, give her a good education, love her, obviously, and make sure and raise her to be a capable adult. That was her instruction for me with her. And so if she said that to me, I can only imagine that that's how she was with her children. And, what I hear in that is that the bigger picture is that we can support our children, like we do our job of being their mothers, but then we have to let them be who they are. So that was a great teaching for me, who wants to kind of position everything a particular way. And, we were raised a certain way with my parents as well. And so, it was a good teaching for me. So I don't know how she was with her children, but they certainly all loved her when I saw them afterwards, for sure. And then, when her husband died, she did leave home and go and be with Maharaji and take care of him.
How do we know how old her kid? Like, were they already kind of?
They were semi-grown, I think.
Yeah. Well, that was a big deal that she did that.
Yeah.
That was a really big deal. I remember thinking about that, and I was like...
Yeah. I mean, it was a big deal even when she was married, and she and Jivantima did crazy things like walking through the jungles at night after they had finished all their family duties to go and see Maharaji in the dark.
Yep. That was like not what a nice Hindu lady was supposed to do.
But when she told us the story, she said it with such a sparkle in her eye. She was so cheeky when she told us that story. She was just, she had that little grin.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can... I'm just trying to go with... Jeanette asked another question about when you say practice, what does your practice consist of?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that question. It's helpful.
Well, when I was in India and I was translating for a lot of people, and they would say, well, Ma, can you give me a practice? She would give them these very long practices of like 11 Hanuman Chalisas a day, and a Bajrang Ban, and this and that, and take a shower and wake up at 4. Certain people, there were different prescriptions for everybody, right? But I was witness to them. And I said, Ma, you've told everybody else what they should do. What about me? And she said, you have so much to do. You're so busy. Just do what you can. So that was a blessing. And also, it was easy for me to kind of navigate that because there were times when I just couldn't do as much as I wanted to do because of whatever. And but I knew that whatever little that I always made sure that I did something, even if it was one Hanuman Chalisa. Some days it's just like getting that mala in your hand and doing one round of japa, like just can I do that, you know? And if it meant like waking up in the morning and before getting out of bed, like just doing it so that I can rush out and do whatever else that has to happen, I would do that. But what has happened over the years is that a big part of my practice actually is I do like reading the texts. I like reading the Indian spiritual texts and reading different versions of them, reading commentaries. I'm not really a meditator, so that, you know, the IMS program that Ambika and I did together was the one and only one that I've done, because I'm lazy. I mean, I like to chant. It's just easier for me. Do you remember when we went to that retreat, I was waiting till the 9 o'clock thing because that one teacher would do that Tibetan chant at night? You remember that?
Oh yeah, she did the Pali chant. She did
Yeah, it was the Pali
Imaya
chant, exactly.
Tamanu. I still sort of kind of
You
remember it.
remember?
But yeah, we did love it. It was like, oh, thank God.
I know, because the whole day, and you know, I wasn't doing yoga like Ambika, so like my legs were hurting, my knees were hurting.
Oh,
I did a
I
lot
was
of
hurting
walking.
too.
Was it? I don't know. I did a ton of walking meditation. That much I remember. But so my practice is now during COVID, I have to say, it's given me a lot more time and space, and I have made it a priority more than any other time in my life, except when I've been in Kenchi, which again was, or if I went to the temples, I made sure that I did practice when I was in the temples, like as much through the day, morning, noon. I mean, I drink a lot of chai, take a lot of prasad, and also have my afternoon nap. But Ambika, you and I were up at 3 a.m.
Oh yes.
getting hot water buckets and all that stuff. And we did our pratna, like we really did. And I continue to do that on every visit, even with babies and children, and all that was still happening. So during COVID, you know, I try to now do what is considered a good number of Hanuman Chalisas, which is 11 Hanuman Chalisas, and I chant the Bajrang Ban. I like to do japa as much as I can with my mantra. And I just study more. I'm studying more and more of, actually now I've started taking Vedic Sanskrit classes, because I feel like it's the root of all the chanting we're doing. And it's always been very moving for me. And I thought that only priests did them until I found this amazing woman who teaches it. And it's so just spot on the right practice for me. So I think this is the other thing I want to say about practice, is that it's really important to find the thing that works for you. You know, sometimes, you know, Ambika, you might have received a direct instruction about what your practice should be. So you followed it and you've stayed with it. And I'm so full of admiration for you for doing that. And I tell you that all the time. And so it's an amazing thing. But, you know, for some people, you don't have, I get this question a lot. It's like, what am I supposed to do? I didn't have a guru tell me what to do. But the thing is that we have this satsang. We have so many teachings available to us by teachers. Now we get it online from, like, directly we can hear the Karmapa teaching, or we can hear His Holiness teaching, or, you know, pujas being beamed in from temples in India, or whatever it might be. But it's so important to find a thing that really, like, it has to call to you, whatever that is. It can be anything. It could be just watching your breath. Like, if that's the simplest thing and all these words is like mumbo jumbo, I can't deal with the mantra, fine. You know, do something, but find what it is. And it can be the simplest of things. You know, don't want to do 108, get a wrist mala, do 27 beads and do Ram. You know, do something. And it doesn't really matter what my practice is or your practice is or anybody else's practices. Is that find a way to, and this is something Ma said to you also, Ambika, is to, like, find the time of day, like, and make sure you do it always at that time, which is not something that I did, because when I'm touring or doing this and that, like I wasn't always making time to do it properly. But now I feel like I've set a course for myself, and I want to try and stay with it, since in this 1 year in particular, to have a time of day that I do my practice, which generally speaking, morning is best, just for everybody.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, it's funny. I'm glad you said that actually about the daily thing. And it's a good, and thank you for the question, Jeanette. And I will say that, yeah, she was really specific about, with me, she was very specific about my practice. And I've talked about this. It's funny because she gave me so many rules and instructions. And, to my ex-husband, my husband at the time, for him, he was, I had like this many things and do them this way and take a shower, take a bath for, whatever, get up at this time, all these things. And all she told him to do was do one Hanuman Chalisa a day. Just do one and try to remain upright. That's it. Just not even remain upright. I love the way it was phrased. That was the translation from Jaya. Try to remain upright. Like, if you can't, no biggie. And I was always like, yeah, great. But I mean, I am super grateful because I think one of the things with Siddhi Ma is she would give us each what we needed. Like, it was very, like Maharaji, it was very unique. It wasn't the same program for everybody ever, and she had some general instructions, but like, it was pretty personal. And so clearly I needed that in order to keep with the practice. And even in this conversation, you've heard like Nina didn't get pulled away so easily. I do. Right? That's part of my nature, I guess, is to be pulled away. So I really needed something to anchor me. And she knew that if she said it, I would do it. Right? I wouldn't do it if I just chose it, but we're all different. So, and I do think like she did really talk about the same time of day and the like doing it. For me, it was do it in the morning. And I do need pretty much to do everything in the morning. That like, it's the same for me with work, like trying to work at night for, my brain is like mush. I'm getting old. It just doesn't work. So for me to do things like to really have focus, it's the morning. But there are people who it's very different, They really do great practice. For them, it's before bed. Like, that's when they can get a quiet moment. So whatever it is for you, I think it's that daily, if you can be consistent daily, I think that's a big deal, and that's a big deal over a long time. Right? Because Nina, you stayed consistent in a different way, but you've been very consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very clear to me that I needed the refuge of practice, no matter what, however it was going to be, whether I was singing with a group of people or singing on my own. It was always the thing that I knew I could take with me and I could take shelter in. That was very clear. And so in order for that to happen, though, you have to do it, or you can pretend, like you can carry your prayer book around.
You can wear beads.
You can wear, well, I don't,
wear your Om necklace.
Yeah, I just wear a necklace, never wear the mala. But
I
mean, it's not my, I mean, it's nice. Many people do wear mala and it's a reminder to do the practice. So nothing wrong with that. It's just, I don't. But there have been times when I have good intentions and I'm carrying, this and that and all this on tour and like nothing's happening. Like I barely have time to do one round of a jump of practice and I'm out the door and that's it. So, but it's always there. It's always there as the, like, just like you have to have a cup of tea or you have to take a shower, but practice has to happen too.
Yeah. That's great. So we have because Nina's going to close with a chant, but I do want to, there's a couple other questions I want to try and get to. So, this question that just came in, so there are two questions I want to try and get to, Nina. I'm going to say them both now, just so I don't forget them, and then you can address them. Do you still have an Ishta Devata? I love to explore different paths and weave too. That's from Natalie. Mm-hmm. And the other question I wanted to make sure to get to is, can you please share more about the Durga in the temple in Kenchi? I feel very drawn to her, and it seems Siddhi Ma said to be the embodiment of Vaishnavi. It seems Siddhi Ma is said to be the embodiment of Vaishnavi Devi in that temple. She feels much more intense than Hanuman. Where can I learn more about her? I love that the women follow Durga as well as Hanuman. That's a big question. So let's that's great though. Thank you. That's from Caroline. Thank you, Caroline. So let's take one at a time. So do you want to do the Ishta Devata one and also explain to people what that is?
Yeah. So for those of you who know about this kind of practice in the Hindu tradition, there are not only many names, there are also many forms of the divine beings. And, so, you know some common ones like Sri Krishna, Ram, Hanuman, all the versions of the Devi and her different manifestations as Lakshmi, Saraswati, and then Durga, who is like the amalgam of all of them. And, they're all feminine aspects also of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And then there in India, there are also local, deities that, there's, my Sanskrit teacher said that there were, what did she say? There were 33 million different mantras. This is what she said to me. So they're all like corresponding to different forces or different energies. Anyway, Ishta Devata, I don't think I've ever had one particularly. I was very, very, as a teenager, the first stories that I read were the Krishna Leela. So I was very enamored by his, the bhav of Radha, the Radha Krishna bhav, which is the bhav of lovers. That was a big part of my feeling. And but I wasn't practicing back then. I'm just thinking about Ishta Devata. And in the family, we in the south, Ganapati or Ganesh is a central deity that's also worshipped. But I think because the practice of the Hanuman Chalisa came to me so strongly when I first heard the Chalisa on Krishna Das's One Track Heart album. And then Ambika, when we went to India and Siddhi Ma gave us the seva of chanting the Hanuman Chalisa, thank goodness we actually had some knowledge of what it was. Right. And we were able to sing it, that one melody we knew, or maybe you knew something, I don't know. I was just like, that was the only thing I knew how to sing.
Oh no, that was the only melody I knew. And I actually had no idea it wasn't an Indian melody. And I remember singing it in the temples and somebody coming up to me really sweetly and saying, can you do an Indian melody? And I was like, I'm really sorry. This is the only one I know. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So I don't really consider, that I have an Ishta Devata in that way. But I am very drawn to the goddess. And if you came to Kenchi also, you would see why. I'll just go back a little bit before we talk about Kenchi Devi. But in my family lineage, because in India there are lineages, right, of deities or gurus that you might follow. The deity in our family that is in my grandfather's, on my mother's side lineage, is Sringeri Sharada Devi, who is actually a manifestation of Saraswati. So when we did go to my grandfather's home, his puja room had the central deity was Sharada Devi, but he also had Gopal Krishna, and he had like everything was in his temple at the same time, and he sang everything. So it didn't really matter. Ultimately, all the bhajans he sang were by a South Indian poet saint named Purandara Das, and they were all about devotion. It wasn't like there was a particular deity. It was just devotion to the divine being, period. So Saraswati was kind of there, has always been there in my consciousness. And I find that, when I think about her and her imagery, it's all to help us with recitation of mantra, music, practice. She's the goddess of practice and discernment and wisdom. So I have a feeling for that in a certain way. But I also love, when we were in India, what did we do? We sat with the kirtanwalas and sang Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, all day long.
Until they dragged us out. Mm-hmm.
Until they literally said, like, go to sleep or go do something else.
Yeah, they would kick us out.
Take prasad, like whatever. So in that sense, I don't think I have an Ishta Devata, but my practice. Oh, look at this question that's shown up on the screen.
Can we remove that from the screen,
Yeah.
people? Thank you.
No is the answer to that question. I never have. Krishna Das is married, and I am with someone else. So let's set the record straight. And it's never been that. So as far as Devi goes, when you walk into the Kenchi courtyard, first of all, the temple that Ambika and I were sitting in, there was a small Vaishnavi Devi as well. And she was beautiful. And that's where the kirtanwalas were singing Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Remember that? Where we were singing the kirtanwalas. And then when you go through the courtyard, the freestanding temple on its own, it has its own roof and everything, is Vaishnavi Durga Devi. And I mean, she's just beautiful. There's no other way to describe what it is. I mean, anybody would find this image of Devi beautiful. Mm. And I did hear, I mean, there are so many tales of how Maharaji would, like there's one beautiful one that actually connects Hanuman to Devi. There's a story that he was in Nainital, and across the lake was the India Hotel, where Ma was living at the time with her husband and her family. And Maharaji turned to the devotee that he was with, and he said, Katyayani lives there. And Katyayani is like the compassionate form of Durga. And he said, it is for her that Hanuman had to come. So I don't know what any of these things mean, but it's definitely been a core part of our practice. Like if you came to Kenchi, there's Mahamantra going on, the kirtanwalas are singing. In the Prarthana area, where the murtis are, there's Shivlinga, and there's, people worship Maharaji as Shiva. And in the next one is Lakshmi Narayan with the Ram Parivar. And then next to that is Hanumanji. And then opposite that is Deviji. And then, of course, now there's Maharaji's temple and Ma's temple as well. So I think that we can learn different things in the practices that are associated with each of these beings. Hanuman is shown as fully in surrender and very soft and loving. But, this is also the Hanuman who can grow to a humongous size, jump over oceans, deal with demons, burn down Lanka. He had a wrathful side as well. I mean, there's the Rudra aspect of him, which is very fierce. And same with Devi. And the thing is that we all have that inside of our own selves. That's how we can function in this world. We need all these qualities. We need to be able to summon that kind of power and courage that you see in Devi and Durga when you're reading Devi Mahatmya and she's out on the battlefield. Like we need that too, right? To deal with our own demons. And we need the clarity of the sword and, the weapons that you see that are, that how they're rendered, in the images that we see. But at the same time, there are other ways of viewing these beings as well, in geometrical forms like yantras that have a very different kind of feeling as well. And then there's mantra. So however we align ourselves with these forces, ultimately, to me, they end up being the same thing.
I also want to just say that about the Durga and the image, Caroline, and talk just a little bit about my sort of, you know, Krishna Das would sing, you know, to Durga all the time, and he actually was the pujari at that Durga temple, and he learned all those mantras to the Devi, and I have to say, when I first started chanting with Krishnadas, I was most drawn to the Durga mantras. I actually, in the beginning, I was like, Hanuman Chalisa, I guess it's all right. Like, I was like, yeah, I guess it's all right. I guess I'll learn. I don't know. It was the Durga ones that really had such a longing, I think, partly because of growing up in America and in the West, in Western religion, there's just really not a lot of representation of the female deities. There's just, there isn't. And so I really longed for that. So, you know, I understand why you would be drawn to Durga, you know, and yeah, Siddhi Ma, that Vaishnavi Devi is said to be Siddhi Ma in Kanchi, and she is extraordinary. So, you know, just adding that a little bit. So we're gonna, because of time, I know other people, you know, we can't get to every question and everything. And I always feel like when I'm doing these talks, like we could just go on forever, especially because it's with my, you know, my guru sisters, my satsang so far. It's rich territory. Like I want to talk all night about Siddhi Ma and about the practice, and it's really the best stuff there is. So, you know, I'm glad you guys were able to join us for this, and thank you, Nina. And Nina's going to chant at the end now in a couple minutes. I do want to just say we're going to do this next month. On the 25th is the next one I'm going to have, and that's with Brooke Welsh. And she's also a longtime guru sister on the path, devotee of Siddhi Ma and Maharaji, and yoga teacher. And so we're going to talk about difficulties like depression and loneliness and practice and Siddhi Ma. So that's kind of the area we're going to cover a little bit. And I want to say, if you want to know more about Nina or find out more about Nina, you can go to her website, which is running right here, ninaraochant.com. So
thank you, Anna. Thank you, Mark.
Oh, yeah. And thank you, Anna and Mark, for doing the behind the scenes everything. And if you want to know more about me, you can go to ambikachant.com or hear my music on my Bandcamp page, which is running here from my new single, Ubika. Well, it's not new anymore, but my latest single. But Nina and I have lots of music out, so you can check out our music in the various places. And with that, happy Holi to everyone. And we'll come back and say a proper goodbye, but I want time for everybody to hear Nina chant because it's so beautiful. So Nina, take it away.
So what I'll sing is a chant called Antarayaami, which is the name of my first album. And Antarayaami is defined as the indwelling presence, or also the knower of our hearts. And my experience with Ma and all these divine entities, these names, these beings, they resonate as our true nature. And if we continue to repeat them, we develop an understanding, an inner understanding of what they mean to us and who we are. So the words for this chant are Jai Ma, which is glory to the mother, Jai Guru Maharani, glory to the Guru, great Queen Maharani, Guru Antarayaami, knower of our hearts. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami, Jai Ma, Jai Guru Guru Antarayaami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Devi Mata, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Devi Mata, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Devi Mata, 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 Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Devi Mata, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami, Jai Ma, 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 Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antarayaami. Sarvamangala Mangalye, Shive Sarvatra Sadhike, Sharanye Trayambike Gauri, Narayani Namostute. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shri 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 Jagat Janani Shri Siddhi Mata Ji ki Jai. Shri 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 Ananta Koti Baba Shri Neem Karori Sant Maharaj ki Jai.
Thank you. That was beautiful, Nina. So there were a couple of questions that are pertinent. One is Sanjay asked. He said he came to the event by mistake. How can you join the next one? That's a good question. So we always have them on Facebook on the Brooklyn Kirtan Collective Facebook page. I do them once a month. The next one's April 25th, and on my YouTube channel, Ambika Chant at Ambika Chant. So, because we were on Nina's YouTube channel tonight because she was joining. So, it won't always be on Nina's, but it will always be on Brooklyn Kirtan Collective, always on my YouTube channel, and sometimes on my Facebook page. And there was one other question that I did want to say, which is for Nina, which is, do you Sophia, I think, asked about if you accept students, or so I'll just let you answer that.
Okay, but before I go on to that one, I want to say that also you send out your email, Ambika.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, and you have these events in your email, so you can let me do the promo. You can sign up for Ambika's email list on her website, ambikachant.com.
Thank you, Nina. So good.
And she doesn't send very frequently. So
That's
she will
true.
not fill your mailbox with stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty once a monthish, if that. So
yeah, same for me.
And yeah, so Sophia asked Nina, do you accept students, people to study with you?
Well, I guess I don't really know what exactly it is that Sophia would want to study, but I don't have independent individual students, but I do a lot of events. And, everybody's welcome to join. I do lots of different types of things, some with Tibetan, some of my own, some Hanuman Chalisa, some with Krishna Das, some of my own. So, and other...
Some on Insight Timer. You have a good course on Insight Timer. That would be a good one.
That's a good one to mention. So
Insight Timer course. So
yeah, so after many years of procrastinating, because it was too much energy to do it, I finally put up a course on Insight Timer for how to learn the Hanuman Chalisa. So it's in 10 little lessons, modules of 15 minutes each. And I basically go through the spoken word pronunciation with a little description of what the diacritical marks mean. It's slightly simplified, so you don't have to know all the sh sounds in Sanskrit. You don't have to. And also then there's like a call and response, so you can sing few verses at a time. So you can go back and do as many of them as you want. You don't have to subscribe to Insight Timer as the app. They have a subscription module. You can also just get the course for $20. And yeah, so same for me. My events are often, they're free on Facebook, on my Facebook page, which is Nina Rao Chant. And my events are listed there, but I also have a website, ninaraochant.com.
And you can sign up for her email list there.
You're right. And Sophia, just write me an email and maybe you can tell me specifically what you're looking for and I can help you find that, hopefully. If it's not me, it'll be someone else. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Nina. This was quite a joy.
Yes. And thank you for doing this, Ambika. And, it takes a lot to hold everything together and plan things and keep things going. And you're doing that by doing all the scheduling and everything for Brooklyn Kirtan Collective and also introducing little, programs like this. And so thank you for doing that. And also for the team of people who are supporting this effort. And we may not see them today, but definitely Mark Grinnell, who's on all the Friday night kirtans. And Anna.
We love you, Mark.
Yes, we love Mark. And Anna Ban, who is helping us with the technology and just keeping us straight so that we remember to do things the right way.
Yes, and we love you, Anna.
We're very appreciative of that. And of course, none of this would be happening if y'all didn't come. So thank you for creating this virtual satsang. It means the world, really, to all of us. And it helps us stay with our practice as well. And we feel your presence through the ethers, and to have this global satsang, because it's become global because now people are tuning in from everywhere. Yeah. So very grateful for that. Thank you so much. And thank you, sweetheart. And I will see you soon.
Thank you all.
Come over and have fireside tea with me.
Yeah, I'm ready. Radhe, Radhe.
Radhe, Radhe. Radhe, Radhe. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Hanuman.
Nina.